this many people. We would invite you back when the budget's passed to give input on the budget as well. But so it's good to see you here. And we have an agenda. It's in the middle of the room if you would like one. It's been posted on the state website and various places throughout the city. And we will follow that agenda as outlined. We will first start with the Pledge of Allegiance that I will lead, and then we'll have a prayer by Pastor Daniel Milligan of the Calvary Mountain View Church, after which I will conduct the roll call. If everybody would please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, we come before you this evening, and we thank you for this opportunity to come together as a community. I thank you for our mayor and the men and women that you have raised up in leadership. Father, I pray that you would give them wisdom as we move forward in the year on how to prosper our city. I thank you, God, that we have an opportunity as a community and as residents to have a voice in a situation like this. Father, we pray that you would put your hand upon this city, that you would knit us together as a community, and Lord, that we would honor you with the decisions that we make. May this city, Lord, be blessed by your hand. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
All right, I'm going to step down for the next event. We are here for something that we love to do in the City Council, and that is to present the Hero Award. Tonight it is plural, Heroes Award. But the American Fork Hero Award is meant to recognize someone who has made an impact in our community by selfless service, heroic acts, or through a positive example. We recognize someone like this because they represent the best of who we are. And while a person like this may be rare, having a high school full of students that embodies these characteristics is one in a million. We are proud tonight to honor the elite of the high school who, through training, teamwork, and a will to win, have brought American Fork High, Alpine School District, and American Fork City not one, not two, but 8 state championships. Possibly more as we eagerly watch our boys' baseball team. So as I call your name, we would ask you to come forward and just form a group behind us if you might. We'd like to recognize the boys' cross-country team with Coach Timo Mostert. The girls' cross-country team with Coach Bruno Hunziker. True story, last year I had to start the race for the Still Days, and I learned something as a beginning mayor. You should start the gun on the outside of the race, because if you start it in the middle, these guys will run you over trying to win the race. I thought it was a friendly race, but it is to everybody but them. Representing the marching band is Coach Nate Siemens. And is there anybody here from the marching band? We've been told that they have a performance tonight, but we want to mention them. Okay. Girls swim team with Coach Kathy King. If you come forward. Okay. Boys basketball team. Coach Ryan Cuff, bring your guys up. All your other coaches. DECA, Director Calvin Barnum. Drama, with Director Neil Johnson. And the color guard, winter guard, Coach Jessica Slaba. Okay. They are great examples to us all and instill confidence for us, the city, and our next generation of leaders. For this reason, we want to honor the boys and girls of American Fork High School and their examples by giving them this Hero Award and declaring May 14, 2019, American Fork High School State Championship Day in the city of American Fork. I'm going to invite Coach Cuff if he might come forward and just maybe say a few words, put you on the spot. You did really well the night of the championship.
Thanks. Thanks, Mayor. Mayor and City Council, we're thankful for the opportunity to be here. As teachers and coaches, we're very humbled for the opportunity that we have to coach and teach young athletes, and it's an honor to be part of it. But we want each of you to know that it's impossible to do this alone. It takes a team, and we're very grateful to be part of American Fork community. And it's a culture that is here and will stay, and that we feel the spirit of that culture here. And we appreciate all of your support, and really appreciate you having us here, and what such great kids that we have to work with, and coaches that and teachers that we work with as well at the school. And so thank you very much for all of your support.
Okay. I'm going to ask something. We're going to do this as a little impromptu. I could get in trouble for this, but I'm going to ask everybody to stand. If you don't know the words, I've asked somebody to lead us. If you would have seen this the night of the state championship, tell me your name. Isaac. Isaac brought down 400 kids about 3 times. Brought them up into the stands and down with the stands. This kid knows how to lead us in a fight song. So I'm going to have him lead us all in a fight song. We'll sing along with you. Okay. I'm just going to turn the mic down. Okay? All right.
These guys better sing it. If you guys know it, sing it.
Please stand.
Okay, please stand.
Dear O.A.I., yes, we will love you till we die. Our banner's bright, a red and white, will be a beacon through the night. Dramatic arts and all track will always bring the honors back. We'll sing our praises to the sky. We'll always fight for AFI. Dear AFI, we will love you till we die. Our banner's bright, red and white, will be a beacon through the night. Dramatic arts and all track will always bring the honors back. We'll sing our praises to the sky. We'll always fight for AFI. Proud to be a caveman.
All right, let's get a photo. If we could get the council, if you could just come down here and get in the middle of this, or if we can get you the height behind it.
Better back here. It's about them, not us. You better leave her down front.
First time in my life she's as tall as the other basketball.
I'm still sideways.
Do you want 2 rows?
Just come in real close to me and turn sideways. 8 foot tall.
You can come in and it's fine. Okay.
Way to go, guys. Hey, Mayor,
Thanks, Coach. Thank you, appreciate it. Okay. We still want everybody here to come back to budget meeting, okay? All right, item number 3 is a presentation by Utah Recreation and Parks Association of awards to the American Fork Fitness Center and Recreation. We have with us the Executive Director, Leanne Powell.
Yes.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Kind of makes me wish I would have been a caveman. Dang.
It's not too late.
I was born here, so that's a good thing, right? So thank you for having us. This is John Bradley. He is the Recreation Director down in Nephi and is our current President-elect for our association. My name is Leanne Powell. I'm the Executive Director. And we represent our Parks Recreation Association, about 1,400 members statewide, Parks Recreation professionals around the state. One of the things we do as part of our annual conference in the spring is we have peers nominate folks for a series of different awards. And then we get all of our past presidents together and they decide who gets to win awards. So it's a great honor for us to be able to come and present some of these awards, and we've actually got quite a few to do tonight. So thank you for having us and allowing us to have the time. We also like to come out just so we can thank you guys, because we fully understand that our Parks and Recreation professionals could not do the great work that they're doing if they don't have your support and your advocacy for what they're trying to do in Parks and Recreation. So thank you very much, all of you, for your dedication to the foundations of Parks and Recreation. So appreciate that. The first award, Mike Stagg, who is with the American Red Cross, he was going to be here tonight and was not able to be here. So I've been asked to present this. So Joey Byington is your aquatic manager, and this particular award from Red Cross is their gold level award that they give to cities that do over 1,000 swim lessons. And in Parks and Recreation, as you probably do too, we feel like swimming is a life skill, and everybody should be taught how to swim. And so this just really is commendation for the great work that your aquatic staff are doing. Also, Joey received one of the scholarships that we give out as an association. So he'll be able to attend some kind of a training that normally you wouldn't be able to send one of your staff to because of that scholarship. And he really is a leader in the aquatics world. So if we could have Joey come up, we'll present this award. Can we get a little?
Yeah.
All right, and the next award we have is for Outstanding Young Professional in the profession, and this award is going to go to Caitlin Pedroza. And I've had the opportunity to work with Caitlin quite a bit. She served when Derek was president. She served on our board of directors. She was also a part of we have a program that's called Leadership Academy, where young professionals dedicate a whole year to trying to learn and grow, and we go all throughout the state, and we picked 12 people for that, so she was not only chosen for that program a couple years back, but then through that program you kind of see the leaders float to the top, the leaders of the leaders, if you will, and Caitlin was definitely a leader in that program. She takes every opportunity to try to improve herself. She got NAES certified, did the Leadership Academy, NAES certification, and just always looking, just has a thirst for knowledge. Great, passionate professional, and you guys are lucky to have her. So if we could have Caitlin come up for this award. All right, and then before I let John do the big award, I wanted to take a few minutes and just recognize Derek Reichert. So Derek served, when we elect a president, they serve for 3 years, and it's a pretty kind of long, arduous 3 years because we put a lot of responsibility on the president of our association, and so he was the president-elect, president, and then past president, and just recently finished up that term. And I think anybody in our association would definitely say that that Derek came in with a vision of where he wanted our association to go, and he's really changed the culture of our association, and we are much better off because of his leadership. You know, you guys know Derek, you work with him every day. He's a great leader, but the thing that I appreciated was his strategic thinking and his passion for the profession, his willingness to mentor younger professionals and really lead our Parks and Recreation Association into the future, and he's done a great job with that. So we just want to give him this Board of Directors plaque. So Derek, if you'll come up. Thank you, sir. Sad.
I am just pleased to be here today. As you know, in Parks and Recreation, we all wear many hats, and one of my hats was to actually be a track coach at Saratoga Springs right before this. And your staff do that too. They do all different kinds of things, but we love what we do. We have a passion for making the lives better of our residents. And the award that I get to present today is a very prestigious award. And so based on population, Utah is split up, and in the Class 2 population of 15 to 50,000 people, multiple cities apply for an award. And there's a lot of great cities in that category, cities that are building new facilities, doing wonderful programs, and so forth. But one of the things that really stood out about American Fork is, one, your commitment to excellence, and two, your creativity to fund things. And that was shown with your park tax, sales tax, that you're able to actually make improvements at Art Dye Fields. And I'm not even from Nephi, and I know where it's at, and it's amazing what you're doing. And so adding those things and your amazing staff here, it was a pleasure for us to recognize American Fork City as an outstanding department in the state of Utah. So let's have the whole staff come up, please.
Mayor, if I could make just a couple comments, if that's all right. Was going to make when the high school was here, but I was going to thank the basketball team for pulling it out for us. I had a friendly wager with the Pleasant Grove City Council as they'd kind of called me out on social media, and we ended up losing the region, but ended up taking the state, and so Pleasant Grove said no need to make good on that bet, and so they saved me having to wear a Viking jersey, as much as I would have loved to have that happen. But they run a great sports program. Also wanted to thank the recreation department. Just a couple stories real quick. My wife and I were at the end of April thinking, hey, we got to get our kids into swim lessons, right? You got to teach them to swim and everything of that nature. And we couldn't get into the F recreation. It was completely booked out, solid. So we're going to Pleasant Grove, as much as that, kind of hurts a little bit for the first little bit, but we're going to get them in the later part of the year to do swim lessons. The other thing I want to do is just recognize Kate and Randy. Kate, this last week, my daughter plays softball, and the umpire was in an accident and couldn't show up. And Kate's a mother of two kids. Anyway, she's a young mother, and ended up taking time to make sure that duty was fulfilled. So she showed up to the field and umpired this softball game and showed her dedication to step up when there was some unexpected stuff. And been really impressed with Randy and working with the referees and all the different sports to try to be able to mentor them and bring them up. So just some personal recognitions I saw. So congrats for that.
Should we just go home? No, we'll keep going. We'll just keep going. Item number 4 is a time where we open it up for public comment. If we could limit to about 2 to 3 minutes per person. And we have one that has submitted papers, but you can come up even if you have not, but we would invite Christy Colliard to come forward this time. Christy, if you'd state your name, even though I have, but just state it for the record.
Christy Collard. I've been here about, 6 weeks ago. I just wanted to come and represent Greenwood Elementary and say thank you for the efforts that have gone forth from the city, and as well as the school district coming together and making the sidewalks and the crosswalks around Greenwood a safer place. I know that not all the work has been done yet, and we're waiting for school to get out, but we've already got signs posted for no parking to keep, like a blind corner open, and we've got 25-mile-per-hour signs that have been placed up, and I can already tell a difference. I live on that street, and I've sat out in the front of my yard, and I've noticed that traffic is a lot slower, so I really appreciate that. And just wanted to touch base with you guys and say thank you. We're looking forward to having the crosswalk redone this summer and getting the cement work done and the things like that. And we just wanted to say that we very much appreciate that at Greenwood Elementary.
Thank you.
So thank you.
And we're committed to just, there's going to be a lot of transition during the summer.
Yes.
And we think, we hope they're ahead of schedule. We'll see what happens, but we have good boots on the ground and good communication patterns with district.
Yes.
And and we run this past the superintendent and some of the administration as well, and so I know they're very aware about it. So
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you for your efforts.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, anybody else here that would like to make public comment at this time? Seeing none, we will close the public comment. Oh, there we go. Yes.
My name's Brian Blackhurst. I just want to comment on the short-term rentals.
And you know what? I'm happy to take that now, or we're going to move right into that, and you can do it right before we make action.
You're good.
Unless
I thought this was the time and you were closing it.
No, unless you've got to go somewhere.
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
They pushed me up here.
Okay. We'll move on to the city administrator's report.
Thanks, Mayor. I just have to say, first off, I'm proud to be a caveman. It's a great night, and we have such great youth in our city, and they represent the city so well, and they are the future leaders. And so we can all be very proud of the youth of our city. So, and to our recreation department, I learned a long time ago that we can either recreate our children or we can incarcerate our children. They're gonna go do something. and we might as well keep them busy and keep them active and keeping them doing good things. Otherwise, they find trouble. So I'm really happy the mayor and council's committed to having a great program with the fitness center and the recreation programs. Thank you. This week is Police Week, and on the 15th from 5 to 7:30 there is an open house at the police station. And so they will have some refreshments over there, and we will have officers be able to talk to people and explain what we do and give some more information about our police department. We have one of the best police departments in the state, and that's evidenced by our chief of police, who has received the award for outstanding chief of the state. And our officers are second to none, and they do such a good job. So if we could support our police during this police week, that would be fantastic. That would be from 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And that would be on May 15th. So that's tomorrow night. Yeah. So please support our police in that effort. The Memorial Day breakfast, our fire department puts on a great breakfast. You'll come away full from that, and that will be on May 28th from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. I know Councilmember Barnes will probably go into a little bit more detail on all the Memorial Day activities, and that's coming up. But our fire department is always engaged and always ready to do a great job for us, and they cook a great breakfast. They're great cooks other times too. So, oh, excuse me, 27th. Yeah. I said that May 28th. It's on the 27th, 6 to 10 a.m. So, and then our fire department is also hosting the State of Utah Firefighters Convention, and that will be June 12th through the 15th. And so that all of the fire departments in the state, and actually in the region, in the western United States, are invited to come to this. And it's quite a production, and they will be talking a lot about mental health in the firefighters world, you know, and in their profession. And so that convention will also be a great representation of American Fork City. Just want to tell our firefighters how much we appreciate them as well and all the work that they do. So that's all I have.
Thank you for that report. We'll now move on to council reports, and I'll start with Councilmember Christy Hansen.
Just wanted to thank everybody and appreciate the work that goes into all the different things, the athletics and drama and music and everything at the school and the recreation department and all the hands behind the scenes. And I'm proud to be an adopted caveman. So maybe I'll go back to high school. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Would be.
So anyway, just I have nothing else to report, but just I'm very proud of our youth and our employees
Thank you for that report.
and volunteers.
Okay. Councilmember Shelton.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to publicly thank staff. This last week had a lot of opportunity to talk in depth with Scott. He was literally trying to get better from an illness and took my call, and I really appreciated that, and talking through some issues and questions in relation to the Greenwood Elementary School and the safety issues that are down there. And Kyle as well. I've been crunching I've been asking to pick his brain on these numbers, and it's been great to be able to brainstorm with him and help me better understand the budget that's out there. So I really appreciate them taking extra time to spend with me. Just one thing I think that would be good maybe on that Greenwood Elementary School side of things, if we could maybe provide them with some kind of a written list of what it is we're looking to do. I know there's been a lot of things discussed, but I find that written thing's kind of nice to be able to go back just for communication purposes. They say, oh yeah, we did talk about this, or no, we changed our mind on this, that, or the other. And the only item I would add on that is I'm a really big advocate if we could add those. Scott, you're going to have to help me out here. RRFB flashers there at 250 South. I lived right there in that cul-de-sac for 3 years and got to see that, and I think that would be a huge improvement to that intersection. We actually own a couple from the 900 West where they put the light in, and so my understanding is that we've got some sitting in storage that we could be able to put down there if it would work. So just a couple items I would love to see if we can maybe incorporate into making that safer down there. But I was really impressed with the collaborative effort with the school district, and particularly Frank and Eric and Scott getting together on that. The other item I'd add on that is if we could also look at the safe sidewalk schools. I know Scott and I talked about that. More of a long-term safety issue there is going to be sidewalk on that east side of the school. And I think we need to address that with the school district and perhaps look to have them chip in some funding, perhaps us with the federal grant and other items to make that area safer for kids on both sides of that street as they go up and down. But I think we've got some time to work on that over the next year, but just love to see if we couldn't try to incorporate that. I believe we filed for those safe school sidewalks in the spring, which will be about the same time that they're wrapping up construction, which would be the opportune time to add curb, gutter, and sidewalk if that's something we're able to do. So that's all I have to report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Few things to discuss real quickly. The Memorial Day breakfast has already been mentioned. I think they had a couple of, how many thousand last year? People, I want to say 2,000 or 3,000 or something, but it's a big number of people, and it is good food, and it's worth going to, and it does support our fire department. And so I'm not usually up that early in the morning, but that one day a year, I do get up early and go down there. It is a wonderful experience just to be there with the fire department and the people that work there and all the efforts they put in. It's just good to be with them. Also on Memorial Day at 11 a.m. will be our annual Memorial Day program. And I know there's been some question, and I know there's some false rumors out there. So just so everybody knows, we are going to be in the tabernacle, and it starts at 11 a.m. And if I'm remembering correctly, the marching band from the high school will be there. So if you want a good seat, you probably ought to be there about a half an hour early, because the marching band and their thousands of parents, it seems like, pretty well fill that place up. And a lot of you have heard the marching band, but until you've heard them in the tabernacle, you may want to bring earplugs, but until you've heard them in there, you really have not heard them. They do such an excellent job. And we have a choral group. I didn't have time to get my notes today because of some family stuff, so I can't remember their name, but it will be some good music presented that day. And our guest speaker, who is being punished for leaving American Fork, is Sergeant Southard. Southard, I think's the way he says it. He was with the American Fork Police Department for a lot of years, served 20 plus years, if I remember right, in the Navy, and a great guy, and he will be our guest speaker. So it's a wonderful opportunity to honor and remember our vets and support the families of those that have served and do serve right now. So encourage everybody to go there. It's well worth your time. That's a committee assignment. My other committee assignments are kind of in between meetings, so I don't have much to report on them. Parks and Rec's going to meet tomorrow night, so we're going to work on some trails and some other things with that committee. And then I'm just going to try and tie a bunch of things together, and I'm going to use Christy, if I may, Christy, as an example of this. This is really a wonderful community. And some of us have been here a lot of years. Some have been here a few longer, and some are fairly new. But it is a wonderful community with a wonderful culture. And what makes it that wonderful community are the people who live here and their interests in doing good things for the community, whether it be sidewalks and safe schools, or whether it be sports program, which almost every kid goes through somewhere at some point. They play the sports and they learn from their coaches and the other people that influence them to do good. And we've talked about both police and fire tonight and the wonderful jobs that they do, and the stress that those jobs create is really immense. So we're grateful for them and for everybody else. And to sum it up, and I'm going to throw the pastor in on this one too, okay, Pastor? All of this makes this a wonderful community. And as a member of the city council, it is just an honor to try and serve you and do good and keep up with what you are doing for this city. And I thank you for that.
Thank you for that report, Councilmember Barnes. Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you. It's been a little while since we've had an official meeting, and I do have a number of things that I wanted to report, so bear with me. But I feel like these are things that would be of interest to the council and perhaps the public as well. Thursday, May 2nd, let me start off by saying that I sent the council an email regarding the Lone Peak Business Alliance. And I just explained to them that the American Fork Chamber of Commerce was starting the Lone Peak Business Alliance with Cedar Hills, Alpine, and Highland. And they're hoping to get members from the business community to join the Lone Peak Business Alliance. And they've been having some success. And Thursday, May 2nd, they had their first event, and it was a kickoff breakfast. And I'm happy to report that all the mayors of those 4 cities were there, and that gave a real boon to their event, and it's going really well. In fact, I just got a report today of the number of members has reached an all-time high for the American Fork Chamber, and the board is very excited about that. The next thing I wanted to report on is just a little update on Steel Days, which is one of my assignments on the council. Steel Days is, of course, going to be July 10th through the 20th. And we have some really exciting things that I think are interesting. One is the big show. This year we have a volunteer that's actually helping to facilitate it instead of just me or the chamber or staff trying to do it. And the volunteer is taking on, he wants to make it bigger and better than ever. And we have contracted with Foreign Figures to do it, to be the big show. And we're really excited about that and the whole event that's going to be at Art Dye Park. And that's actually another thing I wanted to mention, is that we are moving the carnival to Art Dye Park. So when on Saturday, when we're having the big show and all the other events, it'll all be together in the one park, and it will give the carnival a little more space. And we're hoping that it'll be a little easier for people to see all the different events that are available. So hopefully that will be a really good thing. The Miss American Fork pageant this year is going to be run during the 2 weeks or 10 days of Still Days. So the very first day, I believe, the first or the second day, I can't remember which one, is going to be the Miss American Fork pageant. And as far as I understand, they're really excited. The pageant directors are really excited about having it at the beginning of Still Days so that it can be kind of the kickoff event for Still Days. And then the new royalty that's crowned at that will be able to be in the parade that year. So that's a really cool thing, a cool change. We have one canceled event for this year and a couple of new events. The Soapbox Derby, at least for this year, is going to be not be held. And there was a couple of reasons for that. We can go into that if you have any questions about that. But there were some problems with how it was run last year, so we chose for maybe just this first year we would try to not hold that. But to replace that, we have added a couple of new events. One is that we're going to have a barbecue cook-off. The day of the car show will be in the same park as the car show, and that should be really fun and new. There will also be a pickleball tournament, which Derek is actually doing, and it will be, of course, on our pickleball courts. So I think that's really cool. The library, because we're not having the carnival here in the city center, the library thought that they would try to do some events because the library does not need to be closed. In the past, we had the library closed during the carnival. And perhaps we're looking at doing some historical home tours in conjunction with maybe the garden tours, or maybe separate. But anyway, that's an update. I wanted to keep you guys updated, so if people asked you questions or something you weren't saying, oh, I've never heard of that, I don't know what that is. Okay, the next thing I wanted to report on is that I was able to attend the Valley Visioning that was on April 17th. And as a reminder, this is a process that's been happening that was, sponsored by the Association of Utah County Chambers. And it's a 3-phase process. The first phase was outreach, and the second phase is scenarios and models. The third phase was the final vision. And it was a process where they went to us as leaders in the community And also to citizens, they held 12 outreach things looking for what was important to people, and then they did a survey in addition to that. And that was all phase 1. Now they're moving to phase 2, and the meeting that I attended in the beginning of April was phase 2, where they were starting to do scenarios and models. But as part of that meeting, they did report on some of the results of the survey and open houses, and that was what they used to help shape the scenarios that will be used to solidify the going forth desires of what we want the valley, the vision of the valley to be. You can look at that online at valleyvisioning.org, but I wanted to point out that the 3 highest priorities that they mentioned that people said was important to them was managing water, improving transportation, and reducing air pollution. And excuse me, I must have something in my throat today, but I just like knowing stuff like that, so as we're making goals and priorities, we know what some of the things are that people are interested in. Okay, the last thing I wanted to say was that the Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring the Memorial Day Golf Tournament, which is before Memorial Day. It's on Friday, May 24th. And that golf tournament is a fundraiser for veterans. So if anybody's interested in that or volunteering for that, that would be a good event. Thank you for your time and for listening to that. The longest report I've ever given.
Thanks for that report. Councilmember Taylor.
I just have a couple of things. Like many of you, tonight was awesome. It was just the feeling of community in the chambers, and so infrequently do we ever have a full chambers unless something bad's going on. But tonight it was all good, and I especially appreciated Pastor Dan, and one of the phrases that he offered as he asked to impart God's help to all of us was that we could knit us together in unity. And this is the kind of thing with what's happening with our incredible recreation department. I can't say enough about Derek and his team. I've worked closely with them for so many years, and to see Randy and Caitlin and Nyla back here, who my kids took swimming lessons from, and Derek, who I've relied on for so many things, just such a well-deserved honor for all of you guys. And to see our community, I don't know, I'm a lifer. I'm proud to be a caveman, sang every word of the song. I don't remember when we've ever had 8 state championships in a year. So I don't know. It just feels right, it just feels right. And Mayor jokes about having people here for the budget. That's because when the budget comes up, this place will be desolate. But it's just nice to have everybody here and be involved, and that was great. I just have one other thing, just one. I'll hit one and be short. As we have all talked all throughout this past winter about the tremendous amount of snow that we have received, and wow, we'll have plenty of water. I always hear, wow, we should have plenty of water now. The reservoirs will be full now. And I really feel like our staff has done a great job of getting the word out in years past when we didn't have an abundance of water, that we could be conservative with our water. And you hear the campaigns that are going on from a state level, slow the flow. And I would just urge us to, as a council and as staff, I would still like to see watering days. I would still like to see us, repeat those conservation measures that would make a difference for our city. Because just because we have the water, we don't have to deplete our reservoirs again. We don't have to be wasteful with water. And I think we become good stewards of the wonderful winter that we've had and the water that is available to us just by being smart and being conscientious of how much water our lawn needs. We're supposed to have a lot of water this week. Starting tomorrow, we'll have a lot of water. Maybe it's a good idea to go home and click the sprinkling system off tonight and see what kind of water we get before we decide to jump back in, and just be a little bit more aware. I think that would be really helpful for all of us, and I think it would make a difference in the long run. So that's all I had, Mayor.
Thanks for that report. I just feel very fortunate to be able to work with great people, and as all these council reports and the city administrative report, and we see what our recreation, we talk about our police department. I can't really add anything except just my appreciation, and it's a great opportunity to serve alongside great people. And I count not just staff and this council, but this community in general. I did attend, I missed it by just about 20 minutes when they sworn in 4 new officers. And, they came from here and they went over to the police department with their families because that's where the refreshments were, and it was a little more social over there. And I took the time to meet each and every one of those officers and their family that had traveled from out of state in a couple of the instances. And in honor of this week and in Law Enforcement Week, I just have to pay tribute again to our chief. I know that he's a guy that shies away from things, but I learned that 3 of those 4 are here. And we got the A recruits out of the academy, and they're here because of Chief Falsliff. He taught them, and they just felt that there was something different, and they loved the connection that was made between law enforcement and community and him. And so we was able to track the A-team to come and work for American Fork City because of members of our staff, and that's just typical of our entire staff, in my opinion. So anyway, that is the mayor's report for tonight. We will now move on to the common consent agenda. I'm not going to read them. That's consisting of 9 items. As the council had the chance to look at them, and if so, has there been any corrections to the minutes, Tara Lynn?
There were some minor corrections from Councilmember Carroll.
Okay. And they've been corrected. So,
Mayor, noting those corrections, I would move approval of the common consent agenda.
I'll second.
okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor and a second by Councilmember Carroll. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Aye. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the action items. Action item number 1 is ratification of city payments from the dates April 9th, 2019 to May 7th, 2019, and approval of purchase requests over $25,000.
Mayor, I'd move approval for the payment of purchase requests and bills over $25,000.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor. Second by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion on the motion?
This includes the one thing that you mailed, right? Okay, so I, like a couple of days ago, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, I pulled into the AF Junior High right behind Officer Lunt, and I was with my husband, and we jokingly said, oh, something about, well, we'll box him in, and he'll have to ram somebody to get out or something. So then we walk in, and I say that to him, and he goes, oh, you can't ram my car, and he showed me the video of what happened to him. And I just, I stepped in it by saying that, of course. But, yeah, that was a really bad accident that was needless, and I'm glad he's okay, and everybody was okay.
Yeah. You know, I could paraphrase what we had is we had an officer stopped at a stop sign. Somebody rounded to come down the lane and just rammed right into him. Just going a little too fast, and we have the footage, we've watched that, but nobody was seriously injured, and everybody's okay. We just have a smashed up cop car. So, anyway. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor. Aye. Okay. Item number 2 is a review and action on approval of an ordinance amending section 17.5.134 relating to accessory apartments and creating chapter 05.41 regulating short-term rentals in American Fork City. So now is the time that if you were here, we would invite you to come forward, and we'd love to hear from our public. Please state your name, if you would, for the record, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm John Wolfenden. I would like to explain to you as City Council why I voted against this ordinance in Planning Commission recently. I think it's the worst ordinance this city has come in the 20 years I've been on the Planning Commission. It's for cities like Park City and not American Fork. We're not a resort city. I think that this is just going to pollute and contaminate our R1 zones by putting businesses spot here, there, all through our R1 zones. They have to have a license that makes them a business. They don't need to be in our R1 zones. It's just going to pollute it. We're going to have parking problems up the Gazan. We're going to have noise. We're going to have people coming and going. The neighborhood's not going to know who they are or what they're there for. It's going to be hard to regulate. My neighborhood right now has 7 homes within 2 blocks of my house that are illegal rentals. Either more than 4 adults or they're not owner occupied. This is going to be, if the council insists on passing this, let's make it owner occupied, just like the accessory apartments, and then enforce it. Make sure that it's actually done. So I keep hearing that we don't want to insult the residents of the city by enforcing things that we should be enforcing. To me, you're insulting the 90% of the residents that go by the rules and the ordinances to cater to the 10% that don't care whether you enforce them or not, and you don't enforce them, so they know that the city doesn't enforce it. And to me, it's a joke to the 90% of the citizens that are here that want to be enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay. Anybody else would like to address the city council? Thank you.
My name is Brian Blackhurst. I'm one of the fortunate ones to live with my backyard next to a short-term rental, and it's horrible. If you're going to pass the law, then put some teeth in it, because at 2 in the morning when a soccer team is out doing the haka and I wake up and they're outside doing that, who do I call? When I called the homeowner, they said, oh, we appreciate that. They won't get their refund back. That does nothing to me as a homeowner, and it happened 3 nights in a row. These people come, and I understood from the Planning Commission that it was going to be limited to 8 people to be able to rent. This has now bumped it up to 12. I would love to have it cut back to 8 or to 6. The fact that we have people bringing full sports teams, we've had buses pull up, full buses come in, we have no idea who they are, having these parties, going all night long, bands playing, being heard for hundreds of yards away, all throughout the neighborhoods. And again, to this gentleman's point, 90% of us who live there and are the residents, the one who owns that house, well, she's not a resident of American Fork. She doesn't live here. She lives in Alpine. She's making money off American Fork. She doesn't want that in her backyard. But all of us that have that joy of having that next to us, it's a problem. So what I ask is, if you are going to pass something, put teeth with it. Make a limitation. You know, the police have been called. The neighbors are frustrated. She had a city, a neighborhood meeting about a development she wanted in there. The whole thing turned towards the VRBO. People could care less the way that she was developing it. In fact, encouraging her to develop if she'd get rid of the VRBO. The VRBO was a bigger issue than her doing some weird development in there. And so I think right now the solution, there is no teeth to this. People are doing VRBOs all the time. I support making a law, but we have to have it so it's enforceable. And I would say 12 is too many. 12 people that I have no idea who they are in my backyard is not my favorite. And that's just the way I feel, and I am proud to be a caveman, born, raised here, and I just want the small town feel that we have, and we don't need to have or cater to people from outside the city because they want to rent inside of our city. They're not living here. Thank you.
Brian, real quick, whereabouts are you living right now?
I live on the west side of American Fork on 700 North.
Okay, thank you.
So I grew up on the east side of American Fork on 700 North. So I've moved a long ways.
East side to west side, huh?
Yeah, it's been a long journey in those 47 years. I am 627. So I'm right next to the McDougal home. It looked like a park. Well, now it's a rental is basically what it is. So, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Edwards. Councilwomen, councilmen, and mayor, thank you for allowing us to speak. I support what both of the gentlemen that spoke before me. I agree with what they said. I'm here to speak obviously in favor of the ordinance and maybe hoping that in the future we can tighten it up a little bit more. I've talked to council a couple of times and she said this is a good beginning, but we can add to this at a later time if it passes tonight. I'd like to take a few minutes and explain. I'm grateful for city government. I think the government of the people starts right here. And I'm sorry to say sometimes it ends right here. So I appreciate everything that you do. Your surroundings are much nicer than I remember in my 4 years here, 4 years in the council. But, and I was awfully proud of the athletics at the high school. That was a great thing to see, and wonderful, wonderful athletes and citizens. I'd like to talk for a minute about fairness. One side will say, well, we have property rights and we should be able to do this. The other side saying, hey, you do those things and you infringe on my rights. And so that's why you're in the position that you've got to make a decision. I think fairness is a big part of that. And the reason I talk about that is because of the existing commercial people that have been good to American Fork and collected taxes for a long time, the motels, the hotels, and that sort of thing, that abide by the rules. And the rules being that they're in the proper zone, rules being that they're licensed, rules being that they, I'll get it, live by the codes of the city in their constructions. And they're really pretty good citizens, I think. Mayor, I don't know, I'm sure you feel that way. It's good to have them here. I appreciate all of our business people. They are very helpful to the city. Fairness comes in to me when, first of all, you start talking about licensing. These people come in, there's no licensing, there's no ability to control who they are or where they are, or to get to those people if there's a problem, like Mr. Blackhurst said. And that's an issue. Just so you know, I have one right next to my house, and it's huge. It's a 9-bedroom home, and they use most of those rooms most of the time. I can only count one night since last November that there hasn't been at least one car there, and usually many cars. They have some off-street parking, which has been helpful, and that's part of the ordinance, I believe. However, they have overflow in that one because they have so many rooms available. Now, there is a restriction on rooms with this, and I appreciate that as well, although I wish it were a little bit tighter as well. But their overflow is always parking on the street, and there is overflow. So I'm concerned about that. I think from a public safety standpoint, these people that are involved in this business having units, basically residential units, that don't meet commercial code, that don't meet the safety factors that all of those businesses have to adhere to, is a serious problem. That part of it is a serious problem. I think the neighbor problem is a huge problem. Thanksgiving, they had a fire going out in the backyard till 2 o'clock. And it was very disruptive, and I was very sad to see that. I called the owners. The owners said, well, we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. But I talked to the owners before that, and they were sure they were vetting everybody. They cannot vet everybody. I wish they could. It would be wonderful. It's not going to happen. It just doesn't make sense. I hope from an enforcement standpoint, and I really do appreciate the mayor, because I asked for an audience. He allowed it. We had a great conversation, and we were able to tell our side of the story. And I think he's been very fair in his outlook on this thing and allowed everybody to at least have their say. And I appreciate what this ordinance brings to the city. I really do appreciate that. From an enforcement standpoint, I hope that the officer that you now have is capable. I think it's very realistic to be able to police this. I don't think it's that difficult. I think starting with the licenses, we know who they are, we know who to contact, and all of those kinds of things. Secondly, that gives us an idea of where they're all located, and following up with some kind of adherence to bookkeeping rules and making those available to the city, to prove what they're doing, would be a good thing. And I think it's very reasonable. I think that can happen. And I think probably even just the one enforcement officer, Mayor, should be able to handle that. If not, I would like to see the city hire another enforcement officer. Because right across the street from me is residence that is now being used as a triplex. And there are cars everywhere. We've asked the enforcement officer when Mr. Christensen was there, and he came rapidly. He was very, very responsive, and we appreciated it. He got horse trailers off the street. He got dead cars off the street, and I hope that's going to continue. But he was very responsive, and we appreciate that. So I hope that's going to be effective going forward. I guess I've talked a little bit about everybody's rights, so I hope you pass this. It's not everything we would like. I hope we can review it after the experiences we've had for 6 months or a year with this, and maybe even toughen it up a little more. And I know I've got a couple of neighbors here that would like to speak, so thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
If I could I ask a question of him really fast? Yeah. Would you like it better? Would you prefer it if it was we allowed no short-term rentals at all? Or is this kind of like a compromise, the starting point?
I think this is a compromise starting point. My personal feelings are much like John's, and that is we've spent a century putting together zoning laws, a century. And in one fell swoop, we're throwing it out the window, and that concerns me greatly. I believe there should be areas that these are not allowed at all in the community. I really believe that. I would like to see that done within the next year. And I think it's reasonable, and I think it's fair. And if we could do that, I think that would pay some homage to all the work that's been done in the city up to this point.
So Jerry, just out of curiosity, if it's okay to ask you a question. And by the way, thanks for your service. I think we had emerald carpet in here, if I remember right, back when you served.
Oh, this is so beautiful compared to what we dealt with.
So it's great. Just as I listened to you, and I hope it's okay just to be very honest with you and blunt, it kind of seemed a little bit on both sides that, hey, this is a big problem that I've experienced in the past, and it seemed as if you had felt like this ordinance was going to be the solution to the issues, but it seemed as if you still have feelings of, I wouldn't want it in my backyard anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And to know how I feel, Councilman, you'd have to live in my house. Because it's an invasion of privacy. Peace and tranquility is gone. All of those things that we think are a bundle of rights when we buy a home are being taken away. Do I think this ordinance is good? I think it's partially good. I think what's in it is okay. It just doesn't nearly go far enough for what we need. Not nearly far enough.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Anyone else? Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jerry.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Kite, and we're on the east side of 7th North, all the way around the other way. I have to tell you, my mother was a cheerleader at American Fork High School. And she died here a couple of years ago in her 90s. And I have pictures. It's really cute. Anyway, we love American Fork. And so when my husband and I were retiring from Oklahoma, Tulsa area, we wanted to come back to American Fork and live in American Fork with that small town, wonderful place where my mother grew up. And so you look for a house, that perfect place for your family, and you search and you find it, and you take all the money you saved all these years to retire, and you buy the perfect place in a nice little neighborhood that's peaceful and quiet and safe. And then the neighbor decides to turn their home into a Airbnb, I'd never even heard of an Airbnb. I didn't even know what it was. Still don't know what it means. But what I do know is we're living next to a hotel where strangers are coming and going and traffic is coming up our little cul-de-sac and the kids aren't safe to be out there. And you think, well, what's she doing with kids? She's a great grandma. We take care of a 2-year-old every day for a family, our daughter. And so she plays out there, and the neighbors next to us also have grandkids that come that play out there, and then we also have other children in the neighborhood who play. But you've got these strangers coming and going, and it's not safe. I mean, you don't know who's there. You don't have privacy, and then I also worry about the traffic and the kids being out there as well. I just worry. And I just feel like American Fork is the epitome of a city with safe residential neighborhoods. And I feel like these neighborhoods are the very fabric of our community, and I hate to see them destroyed. It just makes me sick what's happening to our street. And so I'm glad you asked that question, because in my notes, I have here, my thought was to restrict where these Airbnbs can pop up. And they've done that in St. George, they've done it in Park City, and I think they've done it in Moab. I'm not positive on that one, but I know there are others where they restrict where these Airbnbs can pop up, so probably so that the homeowners can retain the value of their homes. I mean, would you buy a home across the street from an Airbnb? Especially if you have little kids and grandkids, you know? And so I thank you for your service also, and I love American Fork.
I have one question. What kind of restrictions, where do they put these in these other communities? Where do they allow them to go?
From what I read, residential neighborhoods like ours, where the home values are, you know, they have put restrictions. Now, our street only has 6 houses. It's a little cul-de-sac. It's like this little heaven on earth in there. And to bring all this traffic and commotion and strangers. So I'm thinking there should be a restriction on putting something like that into a little cul-de-sac. I mean, there's no room, you know, for them. But yeah, what they have done is they have sectioned off certain parts of the city where people can own Airbnbs. That's what I read.
Are they still in some residential areas, though?
Yeah, it'll be in certain residential areas, but people knowing, you know, when they buy a home, they're going into that area.
But if they buy their home first, and if they've already purchased it, then that's where the thing comes in.
That's a really good question, and that's something we could probably investigate through these other cities and find out how they did that.
I just want to make sure that all of our residents are protected, not just those who have a certain type of home or lot.
Right, I understand. Yeah, it affects all of us, all of our home values and the safety of our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Okay,
so
thank
Cheryl,
you
just real
very
quick,
much.
the Airbnb you're talking about, is it the corner home or the one that's just in?
It's kitty corner across from us, and
Okay.
it's next to Jerry.
Gotcha. So it's the big one that's kind of gone through
It's the great
foreclosures
big one.
and everything of that
Yeah.
nature. Okay. Thank
And
you.
I kind of feel like people are buying homes they can't afford, and in order to afford them, they rent these things out, you know, the rooms out, and you don't know who's coming and going, and if they can't afford it, I mean, we couldn't afford a lot of houses we passed on, but we didn't buy them and turn them into Airbnbs. All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jerry Kite, and I agree with all the things that have been said so far, with a couple of exceptions. From what I read earlier today, Provo City restricts and only permits short-term renting where there's a hotel or a motel present. Now, that's what I read on the website today. And I think that's the kind of enforcement that we should have in our city. Now, as we came earlier and I heard Councilman Barnes talk about what makes this such a great community is the people and what they do, and I certainly agree with that. And Councilman Taylor talked about the great feeling of community. That's why, as my wife said, that's why we moved here when I retired. We were familiar with the city. I attended BYU and we had been down here many times. And we thought we had found the perfect place. And I do have one correction. We have 7 houses now. We did have 6 houses on our street, and they just built another one. The last one on our little cul-de-sac. So we now have 7. And the gentleman who built that would have been here tonight, but he's in California because he's very concerned. He has a very large investment, and he's very concerned, and he's concerned about all of his grandkids that come and go all the time and what's going on there. I know this is a difficult situation, but it's being addressed in many cities. And if it were my choice, and it's not my choice, but if it was, R1s would be excluded. When we bought in American Fork and other places, we looked exclusively for an R1 because we wanted peace and quiet, and we wanted safety, and we wanted value. And so the R1 was a very important thing. And as a gentleman, excuse me, who spoke just earlier, said, that is now at risk. And it shouldn't be at risk. It's a very important thing, and I think you will find most of the people who live in this community or other communities who live in R1 areas expect it to be enforced as an R1, that only residential one family can live there. Now, on our street, as my wife was saying, we have now, instead of 7 homes that were peaceful and quiet, or 6 to begin with, we have a triplex next door with 7 cars, 5 dogs. We've talked to the old enforcement officer before, and he went there and he was very prompt about that. But the people lied and they said, okay, it's all family members that live there. They have 2 apartments in their basement. I've talked to the renters in those apartments. They've now moved. They have new ones again. They continually go. And then on the other side of the street, straight across, we have the one Jerry was just talking about, my wife. And it is virtually a hotel. We counted during the holiday 12 cars there. And as already been said, you can't park that many in your driveway. And there have been parties. There was one guy who was there for a longer extended period. I don't know exactly what. He was really scary. He looked like he just came out of the prison system or something. And, you know, I don't mean to stereotype because we live in a society with all kinds of people. And when I worked, before I retired, I had over 2,000 employees, and I had all kinds, with all kind of diverse backgrounds, and there's all kind of people, but this guy was scary. And you see these people wandering around, and you really don't know what you have. I'm going to share one experience that I hadn't come prepared to share. When we lived in Arizona some years ago, we lived next to Lake Havasu City, if you're familiar with it, and I'm sure you are. Lake Havasu City is a destination, kind of like Park City is, and people come from all over. And there was a young housewife went to the store one day, and as she was getting her groceries into her car, a van pulled up alongside of her, and 2 guys jumped out, grabbed her, threw her in the car, and that's the last time anybody ever saw her until they found her body out in the desert. They had come and rented a little place for the weekend from California. They did find them. But we do not know These people who come and go in these units by us, we don't know what their backgrounds are. We don't know if they're pedophiles. We don't know if they're people like from Lake Havasu that they experience. We don't know. Now, until this happened, we knew all of our neighbors. We were very safe, and we felt safe, and our grandkids felt safe. And I think it's great that the council is looking at this problem because it is a problem. I personally think the R1 areas should be excluded, or do something like Provo apparently has done from what they posted that I read today. Only have them near where there's a hotel or a motel. And I thank you very much for listening to me and hearing my thoughts. Any questions? Thank you very much. By the way, Marissa, is she your niece?
Yes.
Yeah. She served in our mission. We know her very well. What a lovely girl. I guess she's married now?
Yes, she is.
Yeah. Great
She's
girl.
a mother. Yep, she's great. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Okay.
Hi, I'm Julie Blazard. I currently live at 636 West, 700 North. I've lived there for 6 years. Before that, I lived 7 blocks away from there. I love my neighborhood. However, I don't like the short-term rental that's right next door to me. Currently, that's all it is rentals. So somebody comes in one weekend, they're out. Then somebody else is there the next weekend. It can be a small family of maybe 8, or it could be 20, or we've seen 40. We have seen busloads. We have seen numerous cars parked all over the place. But when I have my cute little grandkids that I love to death out in my backyard, and because of ordinances, the fence isn't fully fenced and can look into this backyard, people could jump over my fence and come in. My grandkids can even jump over the fence. I get scared because I don't know who these people are. It is scary to now live in this place that I used to love, and now I don't know who's coming or going. I appreciate you looking at this situation. I'm pleased that it has come to you and that you're acting upon it. I would like my neighborhood to be safe and secure, so my grandkids can be safe, so the children in my neighborhood can be safe, going and coming to school, playing with one another. I want them to know the love of neighbors. But if they see strangers, what are they going to do? They learn about stranger danger, but if they can't even go out into their yard to play because there's strangers about, they don't know who they are. Oh, it's just somebody that I guess is here for the weekend. What do? Do you make your kids stay inside? What would you do? I'm a little torn on this because I have this one situation right next door to me, but I also have a good friend who lives up around the corner that, because of circumstances of a job loss, had to leave their beautiful new home. And they chose to rent it out long-term on top. But in the basement, it's Airbnb. But yet, they have somebody on site, full-time, that handles that Airbnb. There's never more than one extra vehicle around. So I don't have a problem with something like that. But when there is somebody that is not on the property 24/7 that can deal with the loud music, the noise, people that are up at 2 in the morning, it's tough. Who do you call when they just say, oh, well, we just won't give them their deposit back? What do I get from that? When the police say, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. That's why I'm glad you're looking at putting some kind of ordinance in place where the police maybe can do something more to help protect me and my neighborhood. So thank you for that, and thank you for acting on this promptly. Any questions?
Mayor, I've got a couple of comments and maybe suggestions on this, if that's okay. Is now the appropriate time?
Yeah. Is there any other public comment? Have we heard from everybody that wants to be heard? Okay, let's open it up to the council to discuss. Go ahead, Councilman.
When we started talking about this, I believed that it was something that had to happen, and because we had to embrace the inevitable. And the more I've heard tonight, the more what has been confirmed that I had in my gut early on. And protection of the quality of life is our responsibility. And I understand all those things. I also openly confess that every time I travel now, aside from business, I'm in an Airbnb or a VRBO. And I hope that I'm a model renter or whatever. And I realize that anytime you have these circumstances, it only takes one time to go bad, and we're done with it. And I completely understand that. It's been brought up, and Jerry brought it up, and Jerry I appreciate what everyone said. If it were just as easy as hiring another enforcement officer, let's get another one, let's get 2, let's get 3. With the budget, and everyone's invited, by the way, to that, you'll see that those positions just aren't available. The money isn't there to be able to do that. And we pull from that to hire an enforcement officer, and we have someone upset that, we don't have a road paved, or we don't have crosswalks, or whatever that might be. It's a very valid point, but I don't know how we solve that. Enforcement has been an issue forever. We have people with chickens that we need to enforce. And if they live copacetically with their neighbors, then they never get reported, and it's not an issue. This ordinance would take care of the home that's right next to you guys, but I tend to agree more with what's been said, for instance, with John, and that we've worked so hard and to have these ordinances in place, and I don't think this one is here yet. We have to have something. We absolutely have to have something. But I just, R1 at a bare minimum, and I'm not trying to be a person who is stating class and saying certain people should live in certain places, but I don't know how else to do this. I don't know if there's any point, just so everyone knows, if this comes to a vote, I don't know what point we could get to tonight with this as it exists, with little changes that we may make, where I would vote for it. I know we need it, and I want something in place, but it's going to have to be, I don't want to say teeth, but it's going to have a lot more. Maybe it is one of those situations where there has to be an occupant in the home and they can rent a room or something like that. I understand those situations. I felt like all of a sudden that I'm not ready to go forward with this. I think we need something more. And I could go through and say what I think needs to be changed, but we've spent a considerable amount of time, and this is the second item on the agenda with this. But I don't know. That's where I'm falling out.
If I can jump in real quick, I think we do already have an ordinance that addresses short-term rentals. That is, that we don't have one, so it's not allowed inside the city.
Then it comes to enforcement, which was my point.
Which we already can't enforce it. We're not enforcing, not just that, but long-term rentals. We talked about with the triplex and things of that nature, even commercial business activity. On 5th East, I look at, John Heiner came in and built a nice new building. He had to put in landscaping, curb gutter, storm drain. He played by the book and had to pay all the extra funds, probably to the tunes of tens of thousands of extra dollars to get his business. Right across the street, we've got someone that doesn't have the storm drain, doesn't have the landscaping, and isn't playing by the ordinances, but gets the same benefit of it. And so I think that until we can be able to show that we can enforce it, that we can handle it, I'm worried we're going to open up Pandora's box. The other worry I have by just doing an ordinance, all those illegal ones that then become legal, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, even if we have it for a day and then it goes illegal again, they then become a non-conforming use that can continue that in perpetuity until that use is stopped. And so while we say, hey, maybe this is a good starting point, let's start here, my worry is if there's things we want to change down the road, it's harder to go from looser to stricter because they get that non-conforming continuation of use. And I believe it's 12 months they have to go without that.
So I understand the idea that if it's not expressly permitted, it's a non-permitted use, but we already allow rentals. So if there's no ordinance, I don't think we can prescribe them because we allow them to rent. But if the city wants to regulate short-term rentals, I do think there needs to be an ordinance to specifically address it. So in the absence of an ordinance, I think it's open.
Well, I think it'd be good to talk with Sherilyn because in our work session, she maybe gave a different interpretation because it is addressed what long-term rental is. I mean, the state of Utah defines it as 30 days, right? So anything short of that, it isn't a rental anymore. To be a rental, you have to have a 30-day agreement by real estate law. So maybe it'd be good to figure out those technical items, and maybe we do pass an ordinance to start with and say it's not allowed, and then we can start about where to go. My worry is anywhere we start, I'd rather start more restrictive and allow it to get more loose over time as we become more comfortable and have that enforcement, and then the other way, because I feel like if not, unfortunately, these areas that we have, they then become grandfathered in or becoming legal at that point. So that's where I kind of stand. But I would agree tabling this and bringing it back and taking a look at it, and maybe it's legal coming back and saying, no, this is our legal opinion. It is allowed now or it's not allowed now. And then maybe our enforcement officers have the ability to go enforce these issues that are out there.
But I think we also need to look at where we're going to permit them. Maybe that's zoning and along those lines, what we haven't addressed here.
I don't disagree, but I would be much more favorable of a very restrictive one and getting looser over time. Otherwise, I think all those that are, if they are illegal now, all of a sudden become legal because we didn't have the right, we started too loose to begin with.
I would definitely agree with that. I'm not ready to vote for anything like this. It has some good, very good points in it, good intention, but it doesn't have the teeth. It doesn't have the enforcement capabilities yet.
Okay. Well, and we may have to look about enforcement in the city. Yeah. There may have to be, we may have to sit down with chief and decide how we can. I mean, we're already, the police force is already limited in resources. And this being able to monitor these things has forever been a problem. Back from the days of Jim Hardy trying to drive around and make sure those things are taken care of. It's just always been an issue. Mm-hmm. And we may have to look at the way we do it differently.
Couple of comments, if I may. I think I've always tried to stand up for personal property rights and protect those. But in this case, we get the conflict of two different parties' personal property rights. That is the person that owns the property and the person that lives next to it. Sometimes those are in conflict, and those are hard Solomon-type decisions that need to be made. And so I think when we started on this little journey that we're on, we realized there's a problem. And this has been going on for, I don't know how many years across the street from you, John. It's got to be 10 or so.
Closer to 25.
25, okay. Time flies. It is a problem in the city, and I think the intent of this was to get a start on it. And I think we all understand it's not perfect. And I also personally believe that in order to make it better, we've got to start somewhere. We've got to get some experience. We've got to find out how it affects the police force and how much time is it going to take and et cetera, et cetera. And we cannot expect our police force to handle every ordinance every day 24/7. And I don't think they expect to do that. It takes citizen involvement. I have been called more than once in the years that I've been on the city council by people who have a problem going on in their neighborhood. But you know what? They won't call the police. They're afraid to call the police. And why, I don't know. But they are, Chief. I think you guys understand that better than I do. Yeah. So they can come to the open house. So they will call me, and you know what? I've got a bunch of cell numbers on my phone, and I have no hesitation calling a policeman and saying, we've got a problem in this area. Can you guys take care of it and look into it? And you know what? They've done that every single time. Now, with that said, if this passes, for those of you that are involved in this, afterwards, I will be more than willing to give you my cell phone number. I'm not going to give it to everybody. I don't want it on the recording and the TV and everything else. And if you ever have a situation, and I don't care what time of day or night it is, because they work 24/7, we can call them pretty much any time of day or night and get those problems taken care of. But if the neighbors are having a problem with the noise, we need to let the police know so that we can enforce this. I don't think it's a perfect ordinance, but I think we need to start somewhere. And I don't know how many times we've now discussed this for how many hours. And there have been some good ideas come out tonight. I'm not saying there aren't. We've struggled with this idea of how do we make it valid in some areas and not valid in other areas. Maybe the R1 situation solves that problem. Some people have tried to do it geographically and different things, but we always keep running into problems, and maybe the R1 will get that way.
Then they just concentrate in the R2s.
And then they just move to the other areas, and it doesn't solve the problem. And I don't know that we're going to have a quote-unquote perfect solution. I think we need to start somewhere and get some experience on it. So right now, and I apologize if this offends some of you, but I think right now it's time to start. As the Cowboys used to say, no, I won't say that. I've said too many things like that. I think it's just time to start and to get the experience. And so if we vote on it, I'm going to be voting for it with its imperfections so we can get a place to start. Thank you, Mayor.
I do have a comment. I was the one in our work session who was really adamantly advocating for allowing people to have Airbnbs, and because of that, I feel like I publicly need to say something. And since that time, I've reflected and listened to your comments as well, and I'm doing an about face, and I do think we need to add more restrictions. And that's where I lie. I feel like it really does truly infringe upon the rights of the other property owners, and we need to consider that a little bit more. That's it.
So Mayor, unless there's other comments, I'd be happy to make a motion to table this for a future item at a work session.
Okay. All right, I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. It's a motion by Councilmember Shelton and a second by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion on the motion?
I think for our work session, we probably should, with all the things going on, Mayor, I know this is easier said than done, but this could probably be a 2-hour discussion in itself in a work session. So maybe we take one of those slow work session nights. We have so many of those.
Well, and I don't
we won't be
know-
here for 4 hours. We
And this is a big issue that affects, as Jerry pointed out, years of zoning to try to protect certain
Yeah.
things. Perhaps it's not bad to send out a survey like we have with other things that we've done inside the city. Perhaps it's good just to survey the council and see what items are there, just as a starting point to maybe help facilitate that discussion a little bit.
Well, you know, there's no question this has struck a nerve, and that's why we're talking about it tonight. And I think you get the feel from this council and our staff that we're willing to continue to kind of work on this, to try to find the happiest place we can, that sweet spot. There's no doubt there's going to be advocates for Airbnb, and if they knew about this and it's been open and it's been publicized just like any other meetings, I feel like we would probably have a lot of people here that would be, you know, be contradicting and promoting their own rights. But they were welcome to be here tonight, and so you know, we have a motion and a second, but I hope you sense a commitment that we're going to drill down and make this right and fair for this city and do what's right. So with that motion and a second on the table, I'm going to call for a roll call. Oh, excuse me.
So, again, I don't understand a lot, but right now, is it illegal then to have an Airbnb in the city of American Fork?
In my opinion, it's not, because the only restriction I'm aware of is under accessory apartments, where it says in 17.5, 134.13, short-term rentals prohibited. No portion or room of a main dwelling or accessory apartment shall be rented more than one time in any 30-day period. Well, that means you can rent at least one time. So it's kind of, even that's ambiguous. And so enforcing is going to be difficult where we don't have a prohibition that's even clear. So if the council intends to prohibit them, they should just pass an ordinance prohibiting them. And then there would be no confusion.
Almost rather start there at the starting point and then move at the most restrictive and then work our way back from there. But
because as a citizen, tabling it isn't going to help the problem. All of us that are sitting here, we're saying it's going to go through another summer of I'm going to have everybody's family reunion, soccer team, you know, school buses showing up to my backyard, unless it's illegal. And if it is that they can only rent it once, I'll watch and I'll mark it down in the month. But then on the second one, I'll be glad to call the police. I'll volunteer to police that property for
Well, that only
the
applies for
good.
accessory apartments, is that?
Or main
true?
dwellings.
Or main, or main
But it's in the
dwellings.
accessory apartment code.
Oh,
Well-
well, that is incredibly unclear.
well, and what I think would be great is for us to be able to actually, like I said, there's maybe some conflicting there. I'd look for you to meet with Sherilyn and talk about what that was back in the work
Yes,
session.
I've talked to her. She
Okay.
said that that's not her understanding.
Oh.
She and I have the same understanding,
Okay.
but it's unclear, and in the absence of clarity, it'd be hard to enforce something.
Then, if it adds clarity, I'm happy to pass a motion tonight to add a one-line ordinance to make it illegal in American Fork, and then start that as a starting point and move forward.
Do you think, do any of us think that by doing that, to Mr. Blackhurst's point, we add that tonight, that's going to make much of a difference for his summer of rentals?
I mean, he can call the
You
police.
think it will. You can call the police anytime and we can go that way.
Yep.
Then,
And I would almost state, that that's always been the position of the city, because again, any use that's not specifically stated in our ordinance is not allowed. And that is not a use that's been stated. So I just would clarify that. And I don't know if that gives you any more legal teeth to go back and say, this is just an ordinance that's clarifying anything that have been in the past, but.
But we also have ordinances. I'll get,
One other question. On these accessory apartments, it goes on and it says more than has been stated here, and I'm going to read it because I have it.
You know what, we're going to have you come to the mic, because although we can hear you, it needs to be recorded.
Under accessory apartments, it goes on to say, short-term rental prohibited, no portion of the room or main dwelling or accessory apartment shall be rented more than one time in any 30-day period. So there is teeth in there already.
And I think that would just support our argument that short-term rentals never really were allowed in American Fork, and this ordinance would strengthen that position to clarify that.
But all I'm saying is that ordinance already specifies
Right.
they can't rent unless it's 30 days.
Right.
Okay.
Is this under the accessory?
It is under the accessory.
So it only applies to the accessory apartments, does it not, Tim? That's the way I would interpret it.
No, it says short-term rental prohibited.
But look
It's
at
under
the head-
accessory apartments.
It's under the heading of accessory apartments, and
So-
that's what it applies
So
to.
often accessory apartments are in the main dwelling. So if you have a mother-in-law apartment, it's in your main dwelling, but it's also an accessory apartment. Because an accessory apartment is defined as something that has its own kitchen, kitchenette, place to eat, its own bathroom, and living quarters. And so the main dwelling part there, I don't think is going to be helpful to the city for enforcement. In addition, I think you can interpret this, that it just says you can't rent it more than once, so that would still allow one time. So I just think this is so problematic, and especially since it falls under accessory apartments, there's really little we can enforce here currently.
So I'm gonna just amend my motion and maybe butcher this really bad, unless I get a clear indication no one's willing to support it, but.
One second, Rob.
Table it. I think that we can work through it fairly quickly. We all are they all want it more restrictive. I don't see it being like months and months.
Can we have this ready in a month from now, on the first council meeting in June?
Well, I'm just looking at it, we've got the budget we're trying to get passed right now, and we look at the work session schedule with those budget hearings and everything of that nature, and I see that being our biggest priority right now. Perhaps right on the heels of that sometime in July or August, but I think to your point, Clark, it's gonna be a lengthy discussion of how restrictive we're going to be. And so, I don't know, I'd love to be optimistic and say yes, but at the same time, I can see how frustrating it'd be to call the police and say, wait a second, and there's nothing to be able to enforce.
I hate to throw out an ordinance just to throw out an ordinance and suffer the repercussion of that.
Yeah.
It's just we're being a little capricious with this, and I understand the reason we didn't pass this is because we feel your pain and we're trying to do it, but we still have to act with some, a bit of decorum in how we are going to set this up and make it work. I don't know. I'm nervous about that, Rob, and I
would also like to hear maybe from some people that do run Airbnbs in their experience. I'd like to hear the other side, essentially.
I don't think that's bad, at the same time, I don't know, and Tim and I have to have this conversation. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. I think there's some arguments for and against if it's allowed or not allowed. I think there's some gray area definitely there that would maybe be up to a judge to interpretation on an enforcement issue, but, I don't know, I just would love to make it clear, but if not, if there's not that support for it, then I'll just go back to the original motion of making it and tabling it for now.
I would suggest that we could possibly put something restrictive together for next week and have a special session along with our work session, which would give some teeth for this time of the summer while we're putting together the ordinance. And then I would like to have like an open house or something, and specifically invite this and publicize it a little bit more than just the agendas on the state website, so that we can get a wider variety, so that we can address the people's concerns, not so much to go along with it, but to have an understanding, to be open and to be listening to them. And then we'll know who they are, and they'll know who we are, and that what we're trying to accomplish, not just trying to restrict for restriction's sake. So I would suggest being open, do something, table for now, which is the motion that's on there, with the intent of putting this on the agenda, a restrictive ordinance for next week. You think you can?
So not a full revamp of what we've got, but more along the lines of what Councilman Shelton is saying.
Yes, we could do that in a week, if it's a simple thing, and then it would be publicized as such, not publicized as something that's looks like it's what's on the agenda here.
So we're going to perhaps put some clarity then to our existing ordinance, whether we pull it out of the accessory or whatever, to restrict
Yeah.
while we work on a greater ordinance.
That would be my suggestion.
I'm down with that.
And that doesn't have to be, that can just be direct.
I think that we can do this if the council wants to put in some extra time and work for it. Yeah.
So with that, I'll amend my motion to include Councilmember Christensen's suggestion to bring it back to a special session within a week and direct staff to look at.
Are you saying within a week, or are you talking?
By
Can we do it as a special session next Tuesday night?
You know, I'm going to turn to staff. Do you think, is this clear enough for you, Tim, that you feel
If
like?
we had some language from the council on what you're looking for, we'll be putting together, hopefully, the packets by Thursday, Friday, in order to hit next Tuesday. So we have one or 2 days, so we could try it.
What I would suggest would be to put a restriction so that short-term rentals, so it's clear, it's like where it's listed in the accessory apartments, but say, short-term rentals are not permitted, basically, period, you know, explaining what they are, but say that they're not permitted within the city. And then we can, well, work on something else that would be more agreeable and perhaps palatable, hopefully palatable.
That would be good.
And I'm going to open a can of worms, but my suggestion would be completely different and just to only allow it in apartments or row houses, townhomes.
Well, I think that's good to say, hey, let's, I'm kind of like a sketch it thing. Hey, let's just shake it and get a clear thing. Just say, start from a fresh thing and say no. And then we can come in and start building in and saying, yeah, it does make sense in row homes or apartments because of this, that, the other. But from what I'm looking at, I pulled up the minutes from that work session. Obviously, there's some confusion there, and I just love to add some clarity to that to say, here's what it is.
Okay.
Can we do something similar to what we did with our TOD ordinance and have a moratorium on any short-term rentals that can be enforced through the summer while we create a tighter ordinance to put in? Is that?
We would need to do a public hearing for a moratorium.
My only worry is, do we lose any legal footing by, you almost add validity by saying we're going to restrict this use as if they had the opportunity to use it. So by putting moratorium, you almost recognize that that use exists and you're restricting it at that point. And so I don't know if we lose any legal footing on that side.
Do we have a?
I think a moratorium accomplishes the objective of not permitting them, I guess, while you study it, if that's what your intent is. We're not going to allow it or any new ones. The issue is the council is well intended in wanting to help the neighbors who have nuisance rentals. From the enforcement perspective, I would like the council to think through logistically how that will work. So we will send out a code enforcement officer, and we're just going to blanketly ticket everybody who has a rental, and then we have to prove that. We have to prove they knew it. We need to figure out what misdemeanor level, or is it an infraction?
I think that when an officer shows up and writes a citation, that's going to send a very clear message, whether it's a misdemeanor or an infraction. My biggest issue is right now, it sounds like we're not doing anything. And my bigger worry is we're starting from a point of, hey, we're allowing it in the city. So even if we did pass something and we pass this tonight, it gives you guys no ability to have any recourse on your current situation because it'd be a continuing use.
It's already used.
So it doesn't do anything for your situation right now until we pass something that's very clear and says it's not allowed, it's restrictive. It's always been that way in American Fork City. If not, those people can continue to rent those properties and not have to abide by this ordinance. That's my bigger concern.
Well, so consider if it is currently being treated as a permitted use in the absence of an ordinance prohibiting it, you may have contracts already engaged for people who are planning to come. So if the council is going to do a blanket prohibition, which was not envisioned under this ordinance, which was to bring people in through licensing and get them into compliance, then I think you need to think through what that looks like if you have all of these Airbnbs that are currently operating. And now we tell them they can't. Are you going to give kind of a sunset date where you can't,
I just think we always tell them it was illegal, just like if someone has a threeplex right now, that's illegal. Your contract is null and void. It's voidable, right? Because it was something that wasn't an allowed permitted use in that area. So in contract law, if you have a contract and the state or any other government entity comes in and says, wait a second, that provision isn't allowed by law, that contract's null and void at that point. That's not our fault for people who started up Airbnbs without taking a look to see if it's a permitted use inside the city or not. I know that in the past when they've called the city, our staff's, and it'd be interesting to get Adam's opinion if it continues forward, but I know under Rod Despain it was, no, we don't allow short-term rentals in American Fork City. And that's always been the position of our planning department as far as I know. Now maybe that's changed, I don't know. But that's what I would like to say, that's our position going forward, and then we can have something to actually help these residents out. Otherwise, there is no restrictions.
I'm wondering, without any education for the residents, when they come to court, you cannot convict a person without intent. And if they're not aware that Airbnbs are not lawful or VRBOs, then it's an enforcement that is without consequence, because you cannot convict a person unless you can show they knew what they were doing was not permitted.
And I guess my point of that would be, and you have to have the reasonable person standard, right? Would a reasonable person know if this was allowed or not, right? A reasonable person is not going to drive 60 miles an hour down the road and you can say, hey, it wasn't posted. I didn't know in a residential zone you're not supposed to go 60 miles an hour. I guess my point would be, I'm not looking to turn a bunch of people into criminals. I'm looking to have them knock on the door, talk to the owner and say, hey, this never really was a permitted use. I'm sorry, it's not allowed anymore. If you continue it, you've now been made aware and we can now prove that intent in court. But that's been the position of the city from the beginnings, that these weren't allowed. I'd rather do education to begin with a soft hand, and then if they continue after they've been made aware of it to violate it, then we have every right to go after them.
So now what I'm hearing, which I like, which is there's kind of this graduated progression of we're going to go and warn, we're going to go and educate, and eventually we're going to ticket when they have been warned and then continue to violate? Is that what
That's how I look at like a police officer pulling someone over and they did some kind of minor infraction. The police officer's there just to remind them, hey, you made a rolling stop. He has the opportunity to cite them if he wants to, or we can educate them. But if we can document it, that the enforcement officer educated that person and they continue to violate the law, then we can go after them. But that's my big worry, is everyone that showed up here tonight, we're not doing them any good if we pass something without saying it's prohibited and clear that up to begin with.
So we had the experience where we rented for a fairly large family in Oregon 2 years ago, I think it was. And after we had made the reservation and paid our money, their state legislature passed a law for the whole state. But because we had already paid our money and had the reservation, we were grandfathered in. Now, how do you split all those hairs really gets to be an interesting nightmare. And I'm not saying one way or the other, I'm just putting out some information. The other question that I have is, we're talking about notifying them. Who's them? We're talking about a knock on the door. Who are we notifying if we knock on the door? It sure is not the landlord. The landlord very well could be in California. So we've got to define, in my mind, who we notify and how we notify them. Are we going to have to send all of them registered mail, et cetera, et cetera? I'm not opposed to it. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to think through some of the logistics of how do we get this done. Now, technically, they're all supposed to be registered with the city, and we can find those people because they're property owners. But we've got a lot of work to do, it seems to me.
Well, I think the solution for that issue is you bring them to us. We don't go after them. You require them to be licensed. And then when you have a citizen complaint saying, so this residence is being used as a short-term rental, we look in our records to see if they're licensed. And if they're not, that's the violation, that they never came and licensed when there's an ordinance requiring them to do so.
So I'm going to go back to my original motion. Well, my motion, I made like 3 of them now, so bear with me. I apologize. With Barbara's recommendation that we come back in a week and look at something that just prohibits it straight from the beginning, straight from the get-go, gives us a clean slate so we can address some of the abusive issues that are out there right now. Because if we don't, these R1 issues that these residents brought up tonight is going to be able to continue to use no matter what we do. And I'd rather look at trying to preserve that ability to regulate those and to help out these people versus not. So that's my motion. Is that clear, Terry Lynn? Okay.
I guess the question for me, I'm trying to clarify, is look into or pass? What when you say look into, define?
Well, I think
look
it's a
into.
special session, as Barbara had clarified, that will be in our council packet, that's just to do a prohibition right up front to clarify that the city has always had that position and that we're stating an ordinance to restate that. And that's trying to preserve the ability to regulate these that already exist out there. And then that'll be the starting point. And then if we can work through it in June that quick with the budget, great, let's do that. If it takes to July, great, we can do that. If we want to add row homes or apartments, we can amend that ordinance as many times as we want, but at least we started with the right foundation to begin with to build upon.
And it would give us enough time to do it correctly.
And what do you do with people that have already contracted to rent something?
Those contracts are null and void. Now, I think that we'd do some kind of notification period, right? I think we'd go out. And those 2 that were mentioned tonight, they're very easy to find. I pulled them up right on the county records. They're not LLCs. They're not hidden by any kind of corporations. It's personal names. We can find them very easily to give them notifications.
So I just want to just kind of keep this momentum going up here. So we have a motion. Now I guess do we have a second on that motion? Councilman Taylor?
So we all feel strongly about doing it in a week rather than just having it on the council agenda for the 28th. So you want a special session rather than just having it in 2 weeks.
For me, it doesn't matter.
It's got to be ready by tomorrow, day after tomorrow.
Yeah, 2 weeks does give them
Let's give it 2 weeks.
Okay, I'll amend the motion to be 2 weeks, Terry Lynn.
And I will second that motion.
So to clarify for everyone, the motion is that we're going to ask staff to come back with an ordinance drafted that restates the city's position that these have always been prohibited and it prohibits those uses. And we're going to look to pass that on the next city
28th.
council regular session that we have scheduled. And that will give us a fresh start at that point to build something from there.
All right, I have a motion by Councilman Shelton and a second by Councilman Taylor. Any other discussion? That would be.
And find who the people are by going to their website.
Yeah.
It's all right there, and they're easy to contact from there.
Addresses.
Addresses, phone numbers, all that.
My question, I have a question as well, and maybe it's all about law. Why are we waiting till the 28th? Why not?
That's our next council meeting.
But why not do it tonight?
Because it's not on the agenda today.
Well, I want to see something in writing before I vote on it as a yes. That's me personally. I don't like to just.
Brian, I think we're not going to get it tonight, so let's wait 2 weeks. That's better off than nothing, I think, at that point. So that's good.
You know, it sounded pretty short, like in writing, that it's prohibited.
Man, I thought government was
It's
easy.
going to take a little bit more than that. I mean, no one wants to drag this out.
Okay.
We're trying to resolve it tonight, but to throw out a one-liner that we're going to incorporate, put as an ordinance, and immediately starting enforcing tomorrow, it's just not feasible. And we have so many different things to look into.
Okay.
Rob has a very strong opinion, and Rob's opinion may be 100% right, but then again, it may not. So we're just going to take the time to vet that, if you will, and make sure all of those things are there so that we have a sound ordinance to pass in 2 weeks protects you guys for the summer, and something we can enforce while we try to accommodate those people who may be great VRBO owners or whatever is, that's the case. So we're just trying to do it a little bit better and make it work right.
Okay. Does the council see any need for this to go to planning commission? Because they addressed this issue in planning commission based on the ordinance before you tonight. They have not discussed what's being proposed necessarily. So are we just continuing this item and essentially going to be looking at something different?
I would love to have the planning commission involved at the next level, but I think at this point, we're making a change from what they approved, which we do routinely. So I don't think it has to go back through the whole process again, because we got their comments and everything of that nature, that they were supportive of it. I think we're supportive of something, but I think whatever that second round would be, I think that's where we would incorporate the planning commission.
If that's the case, that will put this back beyond the 28th, because it'll have to go in front of their body. So, okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. I'm going to call for a vote to table this item. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Is it 2 votes, one to table it, and the other is to bring it up in 2 weeks? Or are we just voting to table it?
The motion was to be able to bring it back on the 28th.
That's what I thought the
Wait,
motion
okay.
was. So,
But let's be realistic. If it's going to go to planning commission, we won't see it on the 28th.
No, the motion was to not go to planning commission. The motion was to bring it back here to the city council on the 28th. That's what my motion was.
And
That
then
was
the
the motion.
second part is we review the ordinance and go into more in depth. What we're going to reinforce is no short-term rentals in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So do we need to table the one that we have now? Do we need to vote it down and then suggest a new motion? Because you did say table, and we've got to do something with it. It's just sitting there.
I'll just table it to the next work to,
So can we table and say that we're going to do that in one motion?
yes. That was my intent of the motion, was to be
Great.
able to do it
Let's
that
do
way.
it.
to table it and bring it back in 2 weeks.
Right.
Councilman Barnes,
Table it and bring it back in 2 weeks, yes.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, item number 3 is like unto it. Okay. I have a motion by
Second.
Councilmember Christiansen, second by Councilmember Shelton. Call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, item number 4 is a review and action on an approval of a water banking agreement for Willow Glen LLC.
If you don't
Okay.
mind, I'll make a motion to authorize the city to sign the water banking agreement for water rights with Willow Glen LLC.
I will second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll and a second by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Item number 5 is a review and action of a reimbursement agreement for Dig Deep Excavation LLC.
Mayor, I'll make
Okay.
a motion unless there's questions to be able to approve the reimbursement agreement for Dig Deep Excavation LLC.
Okay. Have a motion by Councilmember Shelton and a second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Item number 6 is review and action on an ordinance granting a public utility easement located at 932 East, 700 North to Rocky Mountain Power. Is there any questions? We have Scott, he's in the back, he's got a cold, but we'll leave him back there until we bring him up, so.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the public utility easement in favor of Rocky Mountain Power located at 932 East, 700 North.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Shelton,
Second.
second by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen? Aye. Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Okay, items number 7A is a review and action. An ordinance approving a district framework plan for Edgewater TOD located in the area of 1155 West and 200 South. If you'd like any lead on this with Adam, I'd be happy to come forward. If not, I don't want to rush things.
This is the guinea pig, right? This is
Exactly.
the first one going through our process. So, I had a chance to review the packet and everything of that nature. Seems as if it went through the staff review and the planning commission review, and now it's more of a, I hate to say it, but a rubber stamp, for lack of a better term.
I just wanted to maybe just give a little bit of a background. So yes, this is the first one coming through. It went through a couple rounds of staff review. It did go to the Planning Commission. District Framework Plan, just very briefly, it's basically a high-level look at how the development will be framed within this particular area. So the exhibits that are provided are identified in Section 4 of the TOD code. And so each of those exhibits has been provided, and illustrated on those exhibits is what's required in the code. The Planning Commission basically made two conditions. Those are on the screen. The first one that is basically adjusts the amount of open space in one of the phases, and then also extends a phase to a future road, so you don't have a phase ending basically in the middle of nowhere. And so they've addressed those. We waited until they addressed those to put those on the agenda, and they've done that, and that's why it's before you tonight. So,
I dig it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
This all fits within the framework.
correct.
Everything that's been approved for the TOD, or we would not.
Yes, so they're meeting the underlying sub-districts, if you will, and the districts. And so from here on out, we get into greater levels of detail where we work with them as staff. But yes, this is the first one, and you'll see more in your future agendas.
What's really cool is seeing the work that we did now being put into rather practical application. And it's really rewarding.
Starting to move.
Yeah, really good.
Well, and I want to commend you and your staff, because I don't know about you, but I think that code's pretty long, and you probably had to work through it a lot.
Yes, and we still do.
Yeah, so thank you. I know it's a lot of work.
No, not yet, almost.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd move to adopt the ordinance approving a district framework plan for the Edgewater TOD located in the area of 1155 West, 200 South.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Carroll. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Aye. Councilmember Shelton. Aye. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, 7B is a review and action on the final plat and ordinance adopting the site plan of Dixie Farms C, D, E, and F flexible lots PUD project located in the area of 900 South, 900 West, 1100 West, 930 South, 1100 West, 930 South, 1000 South, 900 West in the PR 3.0 planned residential zone. I think I got all this right, but it's on paper, so.
No.
No.
It's outside.
Just outside the TOD. Yeah.
So Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the final plats and ordinances adopting the site plan of Dixie Farms C, D, E, and F flexible lot PUD project located in the areas of 900 South, 900 West, 1000 West, 930 South, 1100 West, 930 South, 1000 South, 900 West, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plats and accept the dedications with instructions of the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the April 17th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. Have that motion by Councilmember Shelton. Second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Aye. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
At the applicant's request, 7C has been pulled from the agenda. We'll move on to 7D. A review and action on the final plat and ordinance adopting the site plan of Stone Creek Plat C located in the area of 700 South, 290 West in the PR 3.0 planned residential zone. Any questions for staff? I'm trying to move.
Sorry.
I'm trying to move this one up here and it doesn't work.
Mayor, I didn't have any questions on that at all. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the final plat and adopt the ordinance for the site plan of Stone Creek Plat C located in the area of 700 South, 290 West in the PR3 planned residential zone, and authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instructions of the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat and publication of the ordinance, subject to all findings and conditions identified in the public record associated with the May 8, 2019 Planning Commission meeting.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilmember Shelton, a second by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Aye. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Item number 7E is a review and action on approval of a performance in lieu agreement with K&P Builders for Mount Timpanogos View subdivision.
I move to approve the performance in lieu agreement with KMP Builders for Mount Timpanogos View subdivision and authorize the city to execute the document subject to submission of required water rights and recording of a blanket construction inspection easement.
Okay. Thank you for that motion, Councilmember Carroll. Second by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, item number 8. Review and action on the approval of an ordinance creating Chapter 12.18 of the City Code relating to the use of city parks and recreation spaces. Had a couple work sessions on this. If there's any questions, Camden's moving his way up, but I feel like we had some real good conclusion on our last work session. But we'll see if anything's changed between now and then.
I'm good. I would move to adopt the ordinance creating Chapter 12.18 of the City Code relating to the use of city parks and recreation spaces.
You have a motion
I would second.
Have a motion by Councilmember Carroll and a second by Councilmember Taylor. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, item number 9 is a review and action on approval of a resolution establishing rules for parks in American Fork City.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the revolution. The revolution. I feel like we need that tonight. I think we need a revolution. I move to approve the resolution establishing rules for parks in American Fork City.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor. A second by Councilmember Shelton. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, item number 10 is review and action on the approval of a contract for branding logo services. Any questions for Camden?
I guess I'm just looking at this, 26,000 for the bid, is that what it was?
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we've gone the rounds on this so many times over, I don't know, when was that? Clark, it was the first time we were serving together that we did the
Yeah, it was
first
a while
bid with,
ago.
I think it was Acela was who we used at that time. I don't know, I don't know, I have a hard time spending 26,000. What do we feel like? I kind of read through there, but maybe real simple terms, when we say logo and brand development services, what's that brand development? Is it really just the logo design? What more are we going to get beyond that?
Yeah, in terms of deliverables, it will be a logo, possibly a slogan or a motto, but then there's a whole user guide, style guide, and then they have the specific logo and motto if we're going with one of those, and all the formats, all the documents, one that can be used on social media platforms and one that can be used in the various formats. And then the style guide will go along with that to kind of give the definition and the guidance so that you're not ending up with some of what you may see across documents where images are stretched or there's a different color variation or maybe misuses or other things that kind of dilute down or poorly represent what the city is. Jibe does a great job of the way they put it is that they're discovering the brand, that they're spending a lot of effort trying to talk with council, staff, and residents through focus groups to try and understand what embodies us. And so there's some legwork that they do on their part to come to a hopefully put together the different tangibles and intangibles that represent and embody what American Fork City is, to come up with a product that we value and really represent us. So there's some legwork there too.
Is there any way of saying, hey, if we're not satisfied with the services, we're not going to have to pay the 20, just because we've done this twice now and haven't had that logo that we just want to be able to have? You know what I mean? Is there a way to...
I don't think we've done it twice, have we? The first time we paid for it, we were getting fallout from a website design when we were involved. And the logo, the actual work on the logo was just, hey, we can try and do a logo for you too. I don't think we paid for logo work, did we?
It was a separate item, and I believe we ended up getting reimbursed for it because we were not satisfied with the designs that came back, is how I remember. It was two separate line items. One was for that, was it Civic? Is that who it was? I said it I think it was Civic.
Civic Plus?
Yeah, Civic Plus is who we ended up using. And then we ended up pulling that back because we just said, man, everything we got we just weren't happy with. I think the second time we didn't necessarily pay for anything other than maybe some pizza and lunch, trying to get some college kids to be able to try to design it. I just, $26,000 is a big sum of money to me, but Clark, this is your profession.
$26,000 for what, just for clarity, our company bid this as well. And I don't know which one we were on that list, but we were higher on this. Jibe did Lehigh's City. I think in addition to this, we're building, the contract was to build personality documents, to show implementation on the fleet, showing how the different departments would be treated, from the police to the parks to the streets, however those things are. I think Jibe did a great job with Lehigh. I think they'll do a great job with us. I don't think that's something we have to sweat. I don't think if we push them further because we weren't happy, they would have a problem with that. I think they would deliver. I think $26,000 is a great price for that. As you're able to see from those other bids that came in, I lowballed it because it's my city, and I don't think we're at 49. But Jibe does a good job. They did for Lehigh. They have that experience. It is a discovery. We want them to talk to our businesses. We want them to talk to our residents. We want them to talk to these. Jibe will do a good job. And if we have heartburn at the end of the process, number one, we're going to know before we're way into it whether we're going to have heartburn or not. I believe they'll deliver.
The other question I had on that that's brought up in the past when some residents came up after the meeting when we first approved this with Civic Plus was, hey, you're going to change every street sign, every car. We're going to more or less phase this in over time is what I would see. It's not going to be a hard, hey, we're taking in every vehicle and getting everything redone and every street sign is going to be redone. We see this as a phasing out old stuff and new stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be phased over.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the contract to Jibe Media in the amount of $26,500 for the logo and brand development services.
We have a motion by Councilmember
I'll second.
Taylor and a second by Councilmember Carroll. Any discussion on the motion?
I have one or two questions. On the summary sheet where it shows all the bids, excuse me, get up here, it shows 26.5 plus, as a little plus sign.
Sure.
And then in their proposal, there's discussion of, if I can find it again, there it is. Implementation across website and social media billed at $110 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, this is just the development of the brand mostly.
Right. For an example of what that cost would be represented for us if we wanted to use it, Lehigh, when they did it, they also had the Jibe redesign their website. And so I don't know what rates they were paying, but we would be paying that rate if that's something we wanted.
We'll pay for that.
We're not paying for
after
that.
it's developed, if we choose to do it at the $110 an hour. Correct?
Right. That's right.
Maybe a good deal, I mean, the cheapest might be good, but how essential is the use right now?
I'll let David speak to that. We've kind of been pushing on this for a while. We feel like, go ahead, David.
Yeah, the current logo is very difficult to kind of put across on all of our mediums, the vehicles, especially a logo on a shirt. It's a very intensive logo, a lot of intricate detail. It's hard to actually put that on different mediums. I do feel it's probably time for a rebrand, and I think that Jibe would do us a good job. Is it essential that we do this right now? I mean, that's a decision by the city council. Our recommendation is that we do it now.
The more we use the old logo, the more we'll have to come back and change it.
There's probably never a time it's going to be essential, Barbara. Nope.
All right, I have a motion and a second, and I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye. They better have a hub in the logo, that's all I'm saying.
Some of us do like the older logos, so, you know, this might be difficult.
Okay.
Hub of North Utah County. Still rolls out. You like the way that feels?
Item number 11, review and action on awarding a construction contract for the Art Dye Pavilion project.
Is this the same person that's doing the rest of the park?
No.
No.
Different company.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you come pull Scott out of the back there.
Oh wait, it is. It is the same. We rebid it.
This actually is, they happened to win it, so it's a separate contract, but the bid is, they won the same. Yeah, it is the same.
Okay,
So-
so what, did you have more than one bidder?
Oh, yes, I believe there were 4, if I remember right. So, one of the things, too, I did want to mention just while I have the opportunity is I think last time we had talked about redoing some of the traffic and at least looking at it, and I just wanted to let the mayor and the council know we're looking at that. We're evaluating some options. I know it's a separate issue, but I thought I'd just mention the project is going well. We're looking at that. This is the awarding of the building itself that we had said would be coming along.
I
So,
really appreciate that update because last Saturday I was there and there was not a parking stall anywhere, literally, and it was scary to see that traffic. And even the recreation department has staggered, I think it's 10-minute intervals to try to make that work. And it's downright scary. And that's with no softball games and no use of the Goodsell property. That was just soccer, pickleball courts, and the big following on a Saturday morning of Frisbee golfers that are out there. So,
just
anything
want to
we
let
can
you
do,
know,
great.
we're looking at it, definitely. And look, we've got a couple options we're considering, so.
Derek, some of your success just continues to bring us problems. You realize that, don't you?
I'm so excited I can barely stand it, so I'm going to go ahead and make the motion. I move that we accept the bid submitted by J. Line Roberts and Sons, Inc. for the construction of the Art Dye Park Pavilion project in the amount of $373,564 and approve the construction contract as presented.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor. Have a second? Second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion on the motion?
This is all of my dreams coming true.
Just a quick nod there, Scott. This does mean the tower's going up and there'll be score towers on top of this? No, okay.
This is the building in the middle. So
Yeah.
we adjusted the building substantially from what the original concept was.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember all of the details, but it's substantially different. I can check on making sure that. I
So where would
answer
the
your question
scores
right.
be at now if that's not there?
You mean the
This
score?
will have scores.
There'll be platforms behind the actual
Right.
backstop is what they would be.
So just like we have now. It's not going to be
They'll be a little different, but Derek has sent me a couple of prototypes.
Stations behind each field.
Do we find that? Yes. The reason I asked, I didn't see a rendering in there. I was assuming it was still the same scores tower like we had in Vineyard, but I guess it's hard to kind of off different from my perspective from managing, because you have like one supervisor in the tower and you're able to rotate around and work and you kind of got a clear view of everything. Having them individualized, I don't know if that causes more issues for us on a management standpoint, but anyway, just we're going to build it. I want to make sure we're going to build it what is going to meet our needs. And I hate to just scale it down to have something that's going to meet the cost. Was there a big cost difference? Is that the main reason for the change?
There is a substantial cost difference from the original estimate. Like double, half. I mean, it was that big of a difference in that range. But
a lot of it was due to the engineering of the other building as well.
we did. The other building was overkill in a lot of ways.
Okay. I just don't see that being the norm now. I see everyone moving away from that to the bigger score tower and having everything kind of be managed inside that tower, being easier from the operation standpoint. So like I said, it's a one-time capital expense, so I'd like to make sure we actually, well, I'm just as ecstatic as Clark is, make sure we get it right. I wasn't under the impression that was going to be the individuals behind it, so.
Can one person keep score of all in that one tower?
No.
No.
But they can all reside there and look out on each of the fields. And one person can manage what's going on. But what we'll have, I mean, we'll still have a organized snack bar. We'll still have multiple restrooms. We'll have real food preparation area. And then a place where we can keep all the equipment for field preparation, et cetera. But we will not have that one roundabout on top where everything can be seen. So, to Rob's point, it would be nice to be able to do that. When is the time going to come when we're going to have the dollars to do that? I don't know.
Well,
This will still be a nice solution, but
I just hope that we have the dollars now to be able to do it. I think that they do reside there, and we have the opportunity to take a look at that and see. So again, I'd rather we need to amend our budget or whatever it is. I just hate to get something wrong the first time. I mean, even from a safety perspective, that's playing in a lot of different softball leagues in different cities. We never had fights break out at our softball games, right? The nice thing is you got a supervisor up there that can see everything that's going on. We break that down. That supervisor's only going to be limited to his view site, going around and making the rotations. And so,
well, if we're expecting a supervisor to vault from upstairs down
no,
there and
not necessarily vault, but if there's an issue, can be able to quickly get down there to address it. I've just seen it work better, and from an operation standpoint, work better. So I would just truly ask, is this really what we want? Because we're to that point that I'd hate to come back in 2 years and go, man, we screwed that up, just over $200,000. Because we can't go back and rebuild it on top of it, or $300,000, or whatever that extra additional cost is going to be. So I apologize bringing it up late in the game because I haven't seen where that had changed. I only saw the original renderings. But I personally am in favor of keeping that score tower and making sure that we get what we want out of it.
So Derek, what you're proposing is having, if we have 5 fields, you have a score booth similar, maybe upper scale than what we currently have. Those are just like tough sheds on top of stilts, right?
It was great to see those fall down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they have some shade on top, some wind protection. place they can plug in a little buddy heater. All the scorekeeper things are wireless, so they'll have that at the table with them. It's not the most ideal, but for the facility we have there, we'll make it function. One of the challenges we did run into is that plaza is so big because of the star design. The scorekeeper would be quite a ways away from the
I
field.
thought the same
And so
thing.
this will,
Would they be able to hear balls
yeah,
and
so this
strikes?
will put them closer to the field and be able to. So there'll be some chilly nights in the spring and the fall, but I think it will work.
Okay. Because of being closer, we're not gonna have the intercom system.
We're not
then,
gonna, yeah, we
because
won't have an intercom
The
system.
intercom's what you do to hear the balls and the strikes when you have the other structure, right?
Well, only when you need to communicate, because the ref can't call ball every time. So he would only, if there was a sub or something happening, talk on the intercom. So this will eliminate that communication gap. But like if you go to Lehigh Vets Park, it's tucked in nice and tight, so it's nice to have that tower up top. Everything kind of happens right there. This one is going to be spread out.
That's definitely my preference, but
Yeah.
I just hate to spend money and say, hey, it's somewhat functional, because that's what Art Dye's always been with telephone poles, somewhat functionable. And if we're really looking at getting tournaments and things of that nature, like we've talked about in the past, I'd rather do it right. Well, I guess right is subjective, but really do what we want and not just say, oh, I feel bad we're at the very back end of the bidding process, because I wish I would have maybe known this ahead of time to have this discussion before we went, and maybe I missed that, and that's my bad. So I feel bad bringing it up right now, but I do not want to go and spend money unless the rest of the council feels like it's good to go forward with that. But
Yes, it will work. Yeah. We've debated it a lot in my office with our team of the pros and the cons. There's both ways. Being too far away from the field was going to be a real challenge. How are we going to effectively communicate with the officials and things like that? But this will be, it's a great facility. It is one level, but it's going to have everything we need.
You say it'll work. Barely work. Or really work.
It will really work. We'll host tournaments. It'll be busy. It's going to be, yeah, there's going to be a place for Jason and his crew to have his stuff, extra softballs, full concessions. The restrooms are going to be really nice. There is a one family change station available for families. And there's the overhang where the picnic tables can go underneath. So really the only thing I feel is the scorekeeper thing's the only thing that we kind of had to give on sacrifice.
is there going to be electricity then inside each of those score towers?
Yes, yeah, they'll each have power at their stations.
Is it possible to make it on top? Like, it's too far away. Is it too far away? You know, is it possible to make it in the pavilion instead of, right, I'm so
Yeah,
lost.
it's possible. Yeah, I mean, that's how it was originally designed,
But
was
it's so far
a two
away.
tower.
Is it feasible still if it were that far away?
To communicate?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have little intercom systems, or we were gonna use walkie-talkies, so when they needed to talk, they could talk to their scorekeeper.
The other thing is, you know, an umpire's supposed to make this signal or that signal to be able to communicate. I've just seen it work really well, so I haven't seen that style being used just because of the functionality of it. But, you know, so I'll be voting no on this item just because I just feel like, you know, we got that blank canvas finally. Let's just make sure we really get what we want, because it's going to be a 30-year decision, right? Or maybe even longer.
You know, I wish that canvas had a lot of money that went with it. Because we do need to address some parking issues as well. That's going to take some more money. I think there's got to be some give and take. If staff feels like this is functionable and it's going to be good,
But you feel like it's more than functional, right? I mean, we're past the, well, yeah, no, it's gonna work.
Yeah, we're
past
yeah.
that.
So, yes.
The thing that we're missing out on is we don't have everything in an upper level.
Yes. And we haven't had that before, so we don't know, but
Yeah.
it's,
But the way that our park's configured, that footprint would be massive, wouldn't it?
Be.
It would, yes, it would be massive, or you would be a far ways away. It's a big, nice plaza. There's planters.
We were going to
in
have
there.
an ice
There's-
skating rink there once.
Hold on, we did for 2 days have a skating rink. Yeah, we're past it. It's going to be great. It'll-
All right, does anybody want to make a motion?
Mayor, I'd move that we accept the bid
Hasn't
submitted
been
by
made.
Jay. I think I already did,
Yes,
actually.
you did. You did. It's getting late. And then you seconded it. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen? Councilmember Shelton?
Nay.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Tater?
Aye.
Okay. Item number 12 is a review and action on awarding on a contract for striping services at various locations throughout the city.
Mayor, I move to approve the agreement for striping services as presented and authorize the city to enter into the contract with All Star Striping LLC.
Have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Quick question. I'm assuming this is going to be totally under your direction of how they do it, where they do it, when they do it.
That's correct. This will be an on-call we can use to supplement the work that we do in-house. And yeah, correct.
Okay. Councilmember Christiansen? Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Tater?
Aye. Hey, whatever happened to the striper that you and I used to drive, Bradley?
It's probably still in the fleet. I
I'll
don't
bet
know.
It's probably up against that east wall where it always was.
I'll bet it's in a museum somewhere.
That was quite a nice little unit there. You bet we striped it. Oh, yeah. I always turned the 14-year-olds loose on that stuff.
Item number 13 is a review and action on a contract for concrete services at various locations throughout the city.
Mayor, I move to approve the agreement for contract services as presented and authorize the city to enter into the contract with Quicksilver Concrete, Inc.
You have a motion by Councilmember Carroll. A second by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen? Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Tater?
Aye.
Item number 14 is review and action on an approval of a resolution declaring certain items to be surplus and disposed of.
Mayor, make a motion to approve the resolution declaring certain items to be surplus and disposed of.
Got a motion by Councilmember Shelton and
Second.
a second by Councilmember Carroll. And I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Tater.
Aye.
Item number 15 is a presentation and adoption of the city's fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020 tentative budget. If there's any questions for Kyle, further clarification, again, this is the tentative budget. It's been a lot of work gone into this.
I threw a lot
Appreciate
of
it.
questions at Kyle today, but I know that this is only the tentative budget, but I think there are some things to look over and have further discussion on. But for the purposes of tonight, I'm comfortable with moving forward to approve the fiscal year ending June 30, 2020 budget and set a public hearing for the final fiscal year ending June 30, 2020 budget for June 11th, 2019 at 7 p.m. The only question I have is that seems like it's really close. If we make changes after that public hearing, does that have any effect? We just have to have a public hearing.
We can incorporate the changes in the public hearing if that's what the council wants to do. We
My,
can do that.
my question is what if we made changes on June 13th? Do we have to do another public hearing because of those changes?
Well, we would need to adopt the final budget with whatever changes by the end of June. So, but if we've already had a public hearing, we do not have to have another public hearing. Is that your question?
My question is if we had this budget hearing and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, we decided to change it, we don't need to do another public hearing on the final budget.
Well, if it's been adopted, if you're amending it, but if you're just having the hearing, then you're making changes before you adopt.
I'm just making sure that we give ourselves timeline because that's a big gap, the 11th to the 30th. that if there's further discussions on adopting that we have the ability to do that without having to have another public hearing.
Right. You do not have to have another public hearing if we're still in the process of adopting.
Okay.
If we've adopted the budget,
Then we do.
then we
Okay.
do.
Thank you.
So we could delay it to the 25th, I think would be the day, and we'd still be okay. It's
Look at
of the actual approval. 2 weeks after the June 11th, we could still do the final approval, and we'd still meet the deadline and the law and everything, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Shelton. Did I have a second by Councilmember Barnes? All right, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen. Aye. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Just to note, John Wolfenden's still here. Yeah, aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, item number 16 is a review and action on an agreement with the Utah Department of Transportation for the Central Corridor Transit Alternative Analysis.
I have a quick question on this. Is every city paying the same amount, or is it dependent on the size of the city?
So Provo and Orem are going to pay $10,000 each city, and then we're only paying $6,000 along with Linden, Pleasant Grove, and Lehigh.
Okay.
Lehigh kind of got off scot-free. You know?
Yeah, they did.
I don't know the strings there. So.
And then is that because it's starting in Orem and Provo, or?
It's the whole corridor from Provo north all the way through Lehigh. So it's all of the participating cities are contributing a small
I should
amount.
have pulled up the verbiage, but that said something about the starting place would be Orem and Provo.
They've already gone down the path a little ways already, so they would be finalizing what they're doing. So Provo and Orem have already had a pretty big campaign to look at this, but it doesn't tie the rest of the northern cities together, and so that's the purpose of this study, is to say, hey, that's great if it's in Provo and Orem, but it really needs to tie all of us together and look at alternatives for that.
I move to approve the Central Corridor Transit Alternatives Analysis Agreement with the Utah Department of Transportation for the amount of $6,000.
You have a motion by Councilmember Carroll. Do I have a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Barnes. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, item number 17 is a consider an action to enter into a closed session to discuss the character or professional competence of an individual, to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation, and other things related to Utah State Code 52-4-204 and 52-4-205. Do
I
have a
move to
motion?
enter into a closed session.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Christiansen, and would like to disclose that we will hold this downstairs, in which we will meet, and then we will convey back into regular session from downstairs. So I have a motion and a second, and I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, we'll move on downstairs.